Hello, my name is Angela Parrish, and this is my presentation on the artwork that I selected from the Chicago Art Institute. The piece that I selected is called Woman at Her Toilet. First, I would like to talk about the painter, whose name is Berthe Morisot. She was born January 14th, 1841 in Bourges, France. Her father was a high-ranking government official, and her grandfather was a very influential painter by the name Jean-Henri Fragonard. Both her and her sister began painting at a young age. Later in her life, Berthe married her close friend's younger brother, Eugene, who is also a painter. The image on the left is actually a portrait that he had done of her. Their marriage provided her with a social and financial stability while she continued to pursue her career in painting. The only year that she gave up painting was in 1877 when she was pregnant with her daughter. Berthe lived, unfortunately, a very short life. She lived to the age of 54 when she died March 2nd, 1895, when she contracted pneumonia. When Berthe was a young girl, both her and her sister traveled to Paris to study under the old masters in the late 1850s. She first studied under Joseph Guichard. She then later studied landscape with painter Jean-Baptiste Camille Corot and learned how to paint outdoor scenes. She continued to work with him for several years and exhibited her first art in the prestigious state-run art show, The Saloon, in 1864. She would earn a regular spot at this show for the next decade. In 1868, fellow artist Henri Fatin Latour introduced her to Edouard Manet. They formed a long-lasting friendship and both influenced one another's work. She also befriended Impressionists Edgar Degas and Frederic Brazel, and in 1874 she refused to show her work at the Saloon and instead agreed on being the first independent show of Impressionist paintings. Although she was not commercially known during her lifetime, she did outsell many of her fellow Impressionists, including Monet, Renoir, and Sisley. Now her paintings are very well known and are considered the most pivotal in modern art. She has many different types of paintings, from landscapes and still lifes, as seen here, to domestic scenes and portraits. Berthe Morisot is one of only a handful of women in the group of French painters, the Impressionists, who revolutionized art in the dying decade of the 19th century. This is the painting that I found at the museum that caught my eye. It's called Woman at Her Toilet. This image is very beautiful and is very different compared to most paintings of females, which is another reason why it caught my eye. This painting is of a woman after a long day, maybe a party, sitting down at her mirror, taking her hair down. She is in the midst of taking her hair down as her hand is still holding her hair up. It's a very delicate image using a subtle palette and a nice feathery brushstroke that she is known for. The subtle palette has silver grays, pastel pink, pale blue, and a nice pearly white. Looking at it in person, it almost has a shimmer. Unfortunately, that cannot be seen on the screen. The brushstrokes are very light and very noticeable, and it even dissolves the figure of the woman into the wall. The harshest piece of this painting is the curved back and shoulder of the woman. It's very delicate in all. Here's a closer look. As you can see, the brushstrokes are very noticeable. There's a nice contrast between this woman and her bright white dress against the wall. Even though all the colors are of a pastel hue, they're still much darker in comparison to the light of this woman. As I mentioned before, what caught my eye on this piece was the way that she was portrayed. Typically, paintings, especially those done solely by males, are made for a male audience known as the male gaze. I recently have been learning about this in my humanities class, which is why it was so noticeable to me when looking at this painting. Typically, a painting is made for the viewer. Now, this offers little for the viewer other than a little hint of a shoulder. Usually, a woman looking in a mirror is considered vain because she's looking at herself. However, Morisot broke the convention of this, using the mirror for this voyeuristic pleasure and of the woman glancing back at herself. However, she appears to be looking down almost. This woman is also fully dressed, as can be seen, but is finishing her day. The other brighter pieces in this painting is the flowers on her dresser table, possibly. Many of the things blend into the background. The vase on the table is barely noticeable, but due to the brush strokes it can be seen. And the only image that is reflected in the mirror is that of the vase and the flowers on the nightstand. She also blends her brush strokes together. If you look at the lower arm, it almost blends into the dress as though the stroke continued from the arm into the gown. There's also on the right half of the painting a very intense mix of colors in the wall, maybe to assume that there's some type of patterned wallpaper that's muddled together. Just a really beautiful image, and some lines stand out more so than others, such as the framing on the mirror is very strong. That of the choker necklace is very strong. The line in here is partially diagonal on that of the left side of the painting, and otherwise the strokes go all over the place. They're up, they're down, they're sideways, but they're noticeable, beautiful strokes that in person stand out even more than on the screened image. This specific painting was done on oil on canvas. However, Morisot didn't have a favorite, as she liked to experiment with all types of media, including the oils, watercolors, pastels, and drawings. This piece of work is actually among one of her most notable pieces. And then later on, when she had studied more and was less spontaneous, she had other pieces that were considered notable. But out of this time period when she made this in 1879, this was the most known that she had. Looking through all of her artwork, her paintings are beautiful, whether it is a portrait, a landscape, a still life, or a domestic scene. She was a really great artist, and I was happy to have picked something that was by a female painter, as when I was originally looking at the paintings around the museum, I just simply wrote down notes on the image itself and took a snapshot of the artist. And then when I later went back into researching the pieces, I was happy to see that this one was in fact done by a female artist, as especially in this time, there are not a lot of famous female artists. And I hope that you enjoy this painting as much as I do, and that my presentation was enjoying as well. Thank you, and have a good rest of your day.